In this video, I'm going to share with you everything that I know in the next 60 minutes about how to get along with people. And my name is Daniel Barnes. In this last month, I've gotten to have dinner or lunch with 17 people. Last year, I was invited to both the Czech Republic and Hawaii by different friends of mine. In less than a week, I'll be in Brazil because a friend invited me. And I've realized that so much of my life that I love is because of the people in it. And when I was 19, there were some simple things that I didn't know that I know today that I wish I would have known. And so I'm actually going to walk you through three different things. There's a chapter in my book that's all about rich relationships, and then I wrote a cumulative 10 different newsletters all about how to make a great first impression, and this idea called the listen, capture, action framework, which really all of this is underneath the umbrella of systematic thoughtfulness. And so if you want to become better with people and have better relationships and really just make people feel special in the world, then this is for you. I'm going to go ahead and start with reading the chapter from my book, which is chapter 4, Rich Relationships. That's where we're going to start, and then we'll go from there. So if you want to get better with people, you are in the right place. Here's the chapter. Okay, chapter 4, Rich Relationships. I will expect to pass through this world but once. If therefore there be any kindness I can show, or any good thing that I can do to any fellow human being, let me do it now. John Wesley. It was never meant to succeed. He didn't possess an enormous following, no glitzy promotional machine, only a microphone, a few friends who were more successful at the time, and a feeling that if he interrogated life sufficiently, something profound would emerge. But suppose no one tuned in, then it would be a dud. If it came across as too much of a hard sell or not sincere enough, then it would bomb. If you couldn't cultivate authentic trust, then it wouldn't have longevity. That was the gamble. Yet he pressed on, one episode at a time. Absolutely no gimmicks, no filler, just honest, intrigued conversations. He wasn't sure anyone would care to listen, and if it bombed, it would be a public failure. And sure, people said yes, not because he was well known, but because the groundwork had been laid for a long time before the ask. And this podcast turned out to be one of the most influential in the world. He also wrote a best selling book, not due to some grand strategy, not it was because of people. And his name, Tim Ferriss. And while most of us know him for hacks, systems, and performance tips, the truth is he built everything on relationships. Being the kind of person other people want to be around creates opportunities that you didn't even know existed. When I first moved to Sacramento, I knew no one. I did something that seemed so small at the time. I listened. I had moved to Sacramento to attend Thrive College, which was a 2-year leadership and music development internship at Bayside Church. And when I arrived, I met a guy named Zach. And he said something so simple that I could have missed it. He said, join a small group that is outside of the Thrive College bubble. And I thought to myself, he's a second year student. He knows more than I do. So I'll just listen to him. And if you want to get somewhere faster, listen to someone who's already been there. You can probably guess where this is going. I just started. I did what he said. I joined the small group. Which one? The one that he was in. And here's the wild part. When he saw my work ethic and needed someone to replace him at his landscaping job, there was only one criteria. Whoever replaced Zach needed to be as hard a worker as he was. And guess who got the job? It was me. Now you might be thinking, so what? You mowed grass, added mulch, why do I care? Well, here's the result that I didn't know at the time. For the last 6, almost 7 years, I've gotten to live with an amazing couple that I did the landscaping for, and I've grown tremendously. I finished college, started my second and my third business, and had this incredibly safe home environment for all of this time. And none of this would have happened without Zach and without me simply listening to someone who had more knowledge and skill. Let me tell you another story. In May of 2025, I got to go to Maui. Why? Well, I have to go back about 10 years ago and show you the skill I developed that served me very well. And it's really quite simple. It's leave every conversation with a reason to stay in touch with the person that you just met. You get a phone number, Instagram, LinkedIn, something, email, it doesn't matter. Just have some way to do that. The first business that I started was in network marketing. Now, I know for some of you, that's an immediate red flag. And I get it. I have close friends now who didn't enjoy being around me while I was in that business. So there can be some downsides. Um, Depending on your perceptiveness and discretion or lack thereof. But I learned skills in that business that have shaped who I am. And it's a people business. And I was constantly learning about sales, psychology, and influence. And I was encouraged to learn and then act. And this created an environment of growth. One good habit of many that I internalized was any time that you meet someone, find some reason to stay in touch with them and have a way to contact them. And for years, I've done this. And here's what I didn't expect. When I started my second business, which was a mobile detailing business called Barnes Detailing based in Sacramento, I added up all my contacts, email, and social media connections, and I had 5,515 contacts as a 26-year-old. And one of those contacts was a guy named Victor, and we had actually met at on a golf cart riding from a remote parking lot to a church at Shepherd Church in Porter Ranch. That's in the LA area. And years later, he moved to Sacramento, and we ended up having dinner 3 or 4 times. And then his job moved him to Hawaii, and he sent me this message. He said, "Hey man, if you ever want to come and visit, I've got a place for you." And this was in March, and the only month I'd have time to travel would be in May. I already had a trip to Florida planned in April, and in June I was going to go to Central Asia and Europe. But I said yes and went for a weekend in May. And I'm so glad that I did. I had an amazing time there. I saw amazing beaches, swam with turtles, traveled the road to Hana, ate the world's best coconut ice cream. But my favorite part wasn't the place. It was a conversation on the way back from Hana with Victor and his friend Miguel. We talked about stories, film production, even about this book. The entire conversation was in Spanish, and it was the best 2-hour car ride of my life. But I would have missed all of this if I wouldn't have simply gotten Victor's phone number when we were riding on that golf cart. And if I wouldn't have developed the skill of learning Spanish when I worked at Food for Less and went to Ecuador to learn that skill better. And there was a time when I thought skill or hustle or effort would be my edge. And those are important. Yes, but the real edge, the real joy in life I've learned is being with great people. The right people have altered the trajectory of my life. And this book that I wrote, this was an overflow of so many people, 94 who I wrote out so far, people who believed in me at points that I couldn't doubt anymore. And there are so many, and they believed in me before I did, and they pushed me. They've seen me when I didn't feel worth seeing. And it wasn't always this way. See, no one warns you about this kind of poverty. It's not financial, it's relational. You can have success and still be lonely. You can be known and still not feel seen. And if you don't learn to build relationships on purpose, you'll end up with a full calendar and a relational deficit you can't afford. And if you can do something different, but you can also do something different. See, everyone wears this invisible sign around their neck that says, make me feel important. And there were times in my life when I didn't feel like I mattered, but my response would be to make other people feel like they mattered. And times where I felt left out, I would just include others. If I wasn't given a place of honor, I would give it to others. And people noticed something about me quite early on. At the age of 16, someone told me I would be the president of the grocery store where I was employed. At 18, Jen Townsley looked me in the eyes and said, I believe you're going to build something huge. And she meant it. And I didn't see it. And a big part of it is I was afraid to try and fail. And for years, I couldn't see what they saw. I'd see so much good in others, and I consistently miss it in myself. But their belief in me built a foundation that I didn't know I needed. When the voices inside your head get loud, you need relationships that are even louder. And there were days that I didn't believe in myself, but Jen did. And that belief carried me. These skills that you're learning will serve you either in this business or in the future, she said. And she was right. So here's what you can do. You can send a message to someone you admire, thanking them for something specific that they did for you. This can also be a handwritten note, a text, or a call. And you can use the FBI framework. The FBI framework is feeling behavior impact, and handwritten cards will also have the most impact, really because nobody does it. And an example of the FBI framework is I feel so grateful for you watching this. That's the feeling because it shows that you are the type of person who wants to learn and grow and start something. And that's the behavior. And the people around you will just start towards their dreams because they saw your example. And that's the impact. And so that's the chapter on rich relationships. And I wanted to start there. There's also another chapter in the book, chapter 3, called The Human Problem, and that book, that chapter in particular, I think is one of my favorite because it talks about the reality of how important it is to bring that experiencing amazing things without amazing people is just not the same. And I've heard Erwin McManus talk about this idea of there's kind of this process that we all go through where first things are about toys and then they become about experiences. Your first whatever, it's trying new things, but eventually we get to a point where it becomes about people, that the things we have are better when they're experienced with people. The experiences that we have are better when they happen with great people. And so that was the first part. Now the next thing, and I'm going to try to share my screen here. Let's see if I can go ahead and do this. So I actually want to this playbook essentially, and basically it's a way to go from an outsider to an insider. And specifically, I'm going to be talking through the idea of going through this listen, capture, action framework that I have seen to be super powerful in my own life. Now, if you want to go deeper into any of these, the beautiful thing about this is that I actually have an entire newsletter on each one of the listen, capture, action framework, as well as each one of the four parts of the first impressions guide. So if you ever want more in depth on each of these, I have that already written out for you. And so here's what we're going to do. So we're going back to this. So this really started for me because I realized that there would be times where I would come home and I would just be on my phone in my car and I would go, wow, this can feel like everyone else is having a great time and I just feel lonely. And so I went, how would I get over that and be a part of the things that really mattered most in life? And the first thing that I'm going to walk through is this idea of the extras. And really, this is how, in my experience, you gain the best quality people in each space. And I'm going to assume that at least in some area of your life that you are in groups, whether that's a young adults group at your church, whether you're in college or you go to work and then there are social things outside of that. But every social space that you go into, there are sort of like bare minimums, meaning things that you should show up to either on a weekly basis or even multiple times a week. And then there are, and I'll come back to that. And then there are things that you don't have to show up to, but that are extras. So think of things where you can volunteer to be a part of something, that you can help lead a. I'm thinking of it if you're a young adult in a church, a lot of times they give ways where you can volunteer your time. And so that would be an example of an extra. And when I was in this process of really going from what I felt like was more of an outsider to an insider, so much of it was not just showing up every night on a Thursday night to these young adults gatherings, but it was doing the extra. So there were retreats that I could go on. I would go to those. There were missions trips that I could be a part of. I went on those. There was opportunities to serve, like at Bayside. There was something called Carecella, where you would volunteer and work with kids that were on the spectrum, and all of these things. If I said yes to them, what happened was I then would meet the people who were the most committed to that specific space because they were choosing to do the extras too. So if you want a shortcut or a hack to be able to find essentially the most committed people in any space, look at what are the things that are not required but that you can do, and then look at those people. So if you're a part of I'm a part of BNI, Business Networking International, there are certain people that have volunteered to be a part of the leadership team. For a year, I was a part of that team. I'm not anymore. And when I was a part of it, I found that I would get so much more out of it. Now I have a little bit less time to be able to invest in that space, but to be able to gain influence and to be able to learn who's there, being a part of the leadership team or volunteering in some capacity is a huge way that if you have the capacity to be a part of it, it will fast track you to finding the highest quality people in that space. So do that. So that's the the extras, where it's pretty simple. But the other thing is, after you do those extras, the next step is to take some of those best people that you found while you're doing those extras and then take them to coffee or to lunch or to dinner. And a part of that is then you will start to build real friendships with those people, not just because you're in a shared space, but because you actually know them one on one. Okay, so we got through the extras. The next thing that I want to talk you through is This guy is, let's see. This is what I call the social zombie epidemic. This is how to make essentially how to make a great first impression. So if you're in these spaces and now you're going, okay, I get it. I need to do the extras. I need to be in spaces and do more than what's required. But I don't even know, like, how do I make a great first impression? How do I, like, I'm concerned about what other people are thinking about me. How do I do this? So first of all, I want you to know you're not alone. Um, I think pretty much everyone I know, I have thought that at points. I'm actually going to walk you through this four-step process to be able to make a better first impression. And ultimately, all of this is actually not about me and it's not about you. It's actually about allowing you to be yourself and be present with the person on the other side because everyone else is actually walking into these rooms and they want to be liked and respected and cared for. And so if you learn this skill, you are actually going to be able to bring a gift to everyone else that you speak with. And so with this, I love this because so many people walk into a room and just ask, "Hey, how are you?" And like clockwork, people will say good, they say good, and that's the end of the conversation. The fastest way to stand out in any room is literally just to break the pattern. And so if someone asks, "How are you?" and you say, "I'm stellar," or "I'm phenomenal," or "amazing," or I'm grateful to be here. I'm grateful to see you." Any sort of a pattern interrupt. The first time this happened for me, I was working at this at a Goodwill and I would be at the register and someone would walk up to me and go, "Hey, how are you?" And I would say, "I'm grateful to be here." And the amount of times where their eyes would just light up and they would say, "Wow, no one's ever said that before." And how, oh wow, you're such a good at it just changed that dynamic, even though I was only with them for 2 or 3 minutes while I was pricing out whatever they were getting and they were on their way, but it made a difference. And in that same way, every time that you walk into a room, if you can bring that energy and start with fun, start with being like the way I was taught it, which this is actually from Charisma on Command, which is I'm blanking on the guy's name, but if you look up Charisma University, he's got a great course that I went through and the whole thing is to be better than good. Whatever good is, that's a baseline. We wanna be better than good because it brings a different level of energy to a space, and it will just help you stand out in a great way. And so we already talked about the extras here, um, and so we'll get to that part in just so now you've seen it. But so that's the first part is fun. And that's the other thing that you can do is find a fun way to introduce what you do. So this means that for me, I'm an author, I'm a speaker, I've got a mobile detailing business and a marketing agency. That's the boring way to say all of those things. The other way that I'll introduce myself is when I'm talking about my detailing business, is that I karate chop the dirt off the inside and the outside of people's cars. Or for my book, I will sometimes say that I wrote down all my opinions and then forced people to buy it for $10, which is this book. And that's being an author. And those aren't perfect, but it's basically instead of taking things so seriously and trying to be like, whoa, look at what I've done, it's just being like, hey, this is not that serious. And I love that way of showing up, that way of just adding a little bit of fun. And because that's really the first thing. And if people smile and just enjoy being around you, that is it makes such a big difference. And then the next thing, so if you've added some fun by introducing yourself in a way that isn't normal, that breaks the mold, and you've been better than good, you're already in a great place. The second thing is to build trust. Now, there's a few aspects to trust. One is doing what you said you would do. But the other thing that trust is how trust is built is through physical touch. And so this means giving a handshake. If it's two guys doing a dap. Earlier today, I was doing some work for someone and we had the best dap I think I've had in a long time. It was great. And you just get an instant connection if you get a solid dap. Um, and so if it's a guy to a girl, you can just do a side hug. If it's a and the other thing with touch is that if you can give high fives at points throughout a conversation, or if you need to get someone's attention, if you can touch either their shoulder or their elbow, those are generally pretty safe places that you can rest your hand for one Mississippi and then remove it. That's a way to actually build trust because a lot of trust is built through connection. And so the other thing is, if you notice the people that you like the best in your life, they're often really good at this. Not 100% of the time, but a lot of them are actually really good at making people feel really comfortable in their space. And so that's the second one is trust. The other thing with trust is being honest in spite of yourself. So if something is really going to serve someone well, to say that even when it's at the detriment of what you're building or what you're doing. And that's a really big thing that it's something that I really think about with my detailing business in particular is I am going, this thing actually doesn't make sense for you based on what you shared with me. And that's a huge thing in building trust in general is saying, based on what you shared with me, here's what I'd recommend. And the moment that I can do that, that's the way that I can share something that's really going to serve my clients, serve the people that I'm working with. And that's just a really good thing. That's actually from How to Persuade and Get Paid by Phil. Oh, I'm blanking on his last name. He's got a book called Exactly What to Say. It's really good. You should go check that out. So, fun, trust, and then respect. Now, is respect comes from sharing your values. And so I can talk about how I'm a business owner and how I wrote a book, but the thing that really is most important about that is the values that stand underneath that. So people will respect you when they know what you stand for by the values that you communicate. And so if I say I have a business versus I started this detailing business because I wanted to have the freedom to travel to Central Asia multiple times, as well as visit my family who live in LA and in Florida, and to have the time freedom to be able to go and be close to them, that's a different thing than I started a business because I wanna make money. And, Sharon and, Layla Hermosi say something that I love, which is no one gives a nobody gives a F about your EBITDA, your earnings. And so if it's just about the money, that's not important. Nobody cares. But if it's about the why behind it, it's about being able to be connected to my family. Now having a business has so much more weight and significance behind it. So that's the um respect piece. And the other thing is you can talk about, like, for me, I'm originally from LA. And so in first impressions, a lot of people will ask, what do you do and where are you from? And so you can talk about where you're from, what are the things that you loved about it, and then where are you now? What are the things you love about where you are now? For me, an example of that is I grew up in LA and I loved the fast pace and how everyone was so ambitious and growth oriented, and it really created an internal world that runs at a very fast pace. And what I love about being here in Sacramento is how connected people are. There's such a it's so much easier in my experience to have amazing relationships here. A part of it is actually the proximity. Things are just physically closer in Sacramento than they are in LA. And I find that I just love that environment, and that's why I've been here now for almost 10 years. And so those are the first three: fun, trust, respect. And then the last one is turning the spotlight back to the other person. And the way that we do this is now we go, I've had a fun opening, which I've said when they ask, "What do you do?" or "How are you?" I'm phenomenal. And then they ask, "Oh, what is it you do for work?" Well, I karate chop the dirt off the inside and the outside of people's cars. And they usually will laugh a little bit. And no, no, no. What I actually do, I operate a mobile detailing business. And I go, "Oh, how'd you get started with that?" Most people will ask that question. Oh, well, I started it because I wanted to start something. I had always wanted to start a business, and I wanted to have something where I could have the freedom to travel and visit my family whenever I needed to, and not have to ask anyone for time off. Now, at this point, that's where the fourth step comes in, which is turning the spotlight back on the other person. It's really important. And this is something that I'm still continuing to grow in, is to not go too deep on any one of these things, but ultimately to turn the conversation back to the other person and go, "What about for you? Where are you from? What do you do for work?" And start to learn about them and be curious and have a great time and talk. You can also, something that's so simple, you can talk through a smile. If you do that, the even just look at this, the difference, if I this is me consciously choosing not to smile, and even the difference in my tone is noticeable, versus if I smile, there's just a warmth even in my vocal tone that's different. And so as you're thinking about this and listening to the other person, that's a big part of it. Is the fourth step is just turning the spotlight back on them and going, "What about for you? What are some things that are important to you, and getting to know that person really, really well?" And so those are the four parts of the first impressions. And now I'm going to go over the listen, capture, action framework. And this is one of the things that I've had a few friends of mine that are like, "Daniel, more men, especially in dating relationships, need to know about this." And so I hope that this is super, super helpful. So listen, capture, action. Why did I come up with this framework? I realize there's a huge problem, which is most people have these moments where they want to make someone else feel incredibly special, and then they don't know how. And it's because they started too late. So in the moment that you needed to in the moment that you need something, it's too late to prepare. And it's a similar thing if you want people to feel special. The whole idea for this, what really came from reading a book called Unreasonable Hospitality by Will Guidara. And in that book, it talked about this idea of creating legendary moments, or what they now call legends. And it inspired this idea for me of creating this Google Doc, which I've labeled Unreasonable Hospitality for Friends. And what it does is I basically just make a list of the names of my friends. And then if they mention something that they love or something that they enjoy, I just write it down. And so the listening piece is very simple. It's having a Google Doc with your friends' names. And then if they mention, "Oh, this is my favorite drink," or it's proactively asking them, "Hey, what's your favorite drink from Starbucks? Hey, what's your favorite boba drink? Hey, what's," like, if someone comes in, I did this once. I had a friend of mine who I have dinner with every Sunday night, and she loves boba. And one time when she brought her boba order in, I just took a picture of it. And then 6 months later, when it was her birthday, I went back to that picture that I had taken, because I had uploaded it to this Google Doc, and I was able to get her that exact boba order And she was like, "How did you know exactly what sweetness percentage I wanted?" Because you can do like 100%, 75, 50, 25%, all this crazy stuff with boba where I'm like, I will never be able to remember all these details. But I took a photo so that way I could remember because the details matter. And if I don't have to remember up here, I'd rather have it written down somewhere so I can reference it. And so that's a way to listen. But the other thing is as you're having conversations with people, if someone says, like, this is something that I've done with every girl that I have dated for more than a week or two, where I will actually start a Google Doc for them. And if they mention that they like something, they say this is their favorite food, their favorite candy, the favorite flower, I will write it down. Why? It's not because I don't care and I don't think I'll remember. It's a matter of when I want to be able to make someone feel special, I want to have this wall of ammunition to be able to show them that I care. And if I haven't listened well enough to know what they want and what they need, then when the moment comes that I want to make someone feel special, I've already missed it. So that's why listening is so important. And then the second piece, which I've already kind of mentioned, is capturing. It's having that Google Doc and it's asking proactively and finding out, hey, what is your favorite Starbucks drink? What's your favorite thing from Trader Joe's? What's your favorite activity? Or like, do you love, some people love handwritten cards of encouragement. Like that means so much to them. So if you know that about someone, it's super easy to make their day because you just write them a card. Or like I've got another friend of mine that I know he one of the things I wrote down was that he loves this specific granola from Trader Joe's. And so the amazing thing, there was another friend of mine a few years back, he loved Twinkies. And so there was one day where I knew where he worked. I literally went to a gas station across the street from where he worked because I was just driving by. And I went and bought a Twinkie and I just dropped it off at his work. And it was the smallest thing, but it made his day. And so that's the power of capturing these moments is if you've listened and captured, now all of a sudden the third piece, the action, it's actually almost easy because you paid attention at the beginning and then you wrote it down. So now in this moment that you want to make someone feel special, you just go, "Oh, what do they like?" And you look and then you can just choose from the things that you know they like already. And so that's the listen, capture, action framework. And if you're a guy and you're dating someone, please start this. I had this for my sisters as well, and sent my whole list to my now brother-in-law. And it's a small thing, but man, it matters, and it makes people feel so special when you listen and you can show that you cared, not just tell them that you cared. So that is the thing. And I guess I'm gonna just end this by reading the third chapter of my book. Because I think that this is it's probably one of my I think it's my favorite moment in the book. So I'm gonna this is the last thing. Um, but I think it's gonna hit for a lot of you guys. Loneliness doesn't only visit us in the depths. Sometimes it shows up in at the height. I was in Turkey in 2024. I was perched over the Black Sea, the body of water that divides Europe from Asia. And it was stunning. The kind of view that you take a photo of and think, this is what people dream about. And I remember posting the photo to my Instagram story thinking, this looks amazing. Yet I feel lonely. Not because I was in pain, not because I was isolated in some deep dramatic way, but because I had expected to share that moment. I'd planned to be there with friends, but plans changed, people bailed, and suddenly this beautiful experience, it wasn't shared. It was just mine. And in that silence, something surprising surfaced. Even in beautiful places, even in peak moments, loneliness can still be there. And that's when it hit me. I used to think loneliness was a problem with me. Maybe it was something about my story, being homeschooled, being different, not always fitting in. But that moment in Turkey reframed it. The problem isn't with me, it's a human problem. Even people in relationships feel it, even people in crowds, even people doing amazing things. And oddly, that realization brought me comfort because it meant I wasn't broken. I was just human. That moment didn't make the loneliness vanish, but it made it make sense. And I used to think that loneliness was something that happened to other people. And then I hit my 20s and it became one of my most surprising companions. It doesn't show up dramatically. It creeps in quietly, subtly between the transitions as you see friends and family get married, move, and change. After big wins and inside crowded rooms, and it doesn't mean you're failing. It just means you're human. And honestly, I used to think it was something to fix. And now I think it's something to feel. Because every time I've gone through a lonely season, sometimes it's hours, sometimes it's months, something deeper has started to form. And I've relearned how to be present with myself. I've relearned how to pray with honesty, and I've relearned how to reach out and be present for and serve others. And sometimes we treat loneliness like it's a red flag, but learning to feel and acknowledge your emotions rather than running from them or numbing them is an essential skill to develop. And it requires a tremendous amount of strength. And what if these emotions are an invitation to slow down, to recalibrate, to build strength in silence, to see, maybe for the first time, what you truly want? Most of the time, loneliness isn't the problem. It's what's revealed in the silence that scares you. The worst kind of loneliness isn't being alone, it's not liking the person you're alone with. And the way out isn't through distraction, it's through presence. It's learning to sit with it, to listen, feel, heal, and grow. Because when you come out of that season, you're different, you're more anchored, more empathetic, clearer on what actually matters to you. You know what you want and who you want to become. You don't just make the right connections, you start becoming the right person. And the action, the end is to spend 5 or 10 minutes in silence. And what happens? Write about it and reread the quote at the beginning of the chapter, which the quote at the beginning of the chapter says this. In situations of low stress and safety, mind wandering will be a gift, a pleasure, a creative force. In situations of high stress or danger, mind wandering will be a torment. That's from Stolen Focus. Well, thank you for spending this time with me. I hope that you implement this and that in your friendships, you now know how to make a great first impression and you implement the listen, capture, action framework into your life and that you're able to make some people feel really freaking special. I'm out. Adios.